So we'll have roll call. Mr. Smith may be a few minutes late, and Mrs. Schmitz will probably call in momentarily. So, Rudy?
Here. Hauser?
Here.
Young? Here. Bildo?
Here.
Okay, so we have a quorum. May I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, and in a minute, I will actually airplay the agenda for everyone who's present. But before that, do we have anyone who would like to communicate with the board from the public? All right. John? Nothing? Okay. All right, so we are honored to have a presentation which won national attention from three people in our high school, Matt Moran and Jake Salmon and Riley Vanderhart, and Riley playing soccer.
Yeah.
And these two gentlemen are due at a play practice at 7, so we have really wanted to honor them by showing this video. It's extremely well done, and it's gotten a lot of national attention for the city and for their AP Scout teacher, who's over here.
Yes.
And of course for these young men. So we're very proud of you. Mr. Lane is going to airplay it right now, and then at the end, if there's questions, but I'd really like you to talk about how you came to decide to do this. And by the way, they got some really nice coverage in the Des Moines Register.
Americans. Everyone told the abolitionists, too hard, you could never make change, but they got in the fight. The suffragettes, they got in the fight. The labor movement, they got in the fight. The civil rights movement, they got in the fight. They were told, this is too hard, you can't do it. But the reality is, they organized, they persisted, and they made real changes.
What does it mean to be an American? We set out all across Iowa to find the answer, and it all started in my basement.
There's so many avenues we can explore with that question, but that's part of why being an American is so special.
Jacob, how's that map going?
Done. I really think this is going to help us find the answer. I know it looks a little crazy, but
Yeah, that's a lot of yarn.
it all comes back to having an open, free voice, which is enumerated in the First Amendment of the Constitution.
But what do you even start with this?
I think we should start by looking at the ability to protest, which is a defining characteristic of our nation.
We decided to track down Cameron Caskey, a survivor of the Parkland school shooting and a founder of the March for Our Lives movement.
The fact that I can go out to the streets and say that I'm not proud of what we're doing is why I'm proud to be an American. That shows the strength that we have, and that shows the strength in numbers, and that shows the influence we have on the people around us. To get involved, to get active, it has to hit you.
That was an awesome interview with Cameron. He was incredible.
He was awesome.
Just think, he's our age and is able to make a difference just by using his voice.
And I didn't know it was possible for somebody to be so funny and serious at the same time.
I know.
Our interview with Cameron reminded us of a couple passionate classmates from our own high school.
We decided to sit down with Maya Sims and Raj Oberoi, who orchestrated a peaceful protest at our school in support of Cameron's message.
One of the things I was thinking about is how effective protests are, and the thing is that eventually, the system will listen.
Hey, did you guys know that it's almost the 50th anniversary of the Tinker v. Des Moines Supreme Court case?
Wait, what's that?
It was a landmark case in 1969 that helped affirm First Amendment rights to students. In protest to American involvement in the Vietnam War, John and Mary Beth Tinker wore armbands to show their discontent, leading to their school suspension. And I'm getting a call right now from a person who can help explain it to us.
You are going to make history, one way or the other. If you do nothing, history will still be made. I think being an American means to know about our Constitution, to know about the First Amendment, to learn about your rights, and then to use them. It's no sense to sit and watch other people speaking up about the things they care about. We have to each get involved. We have to be aware of what's going on and then take a stand and speak out.
That was incredible. But how did you get Mary Beth Tinker's cell phone number? Not important. Not everyone check this out.
By redefining political speech as culture, the speech silencers are allowed to claim that your speech is not really political.
After hearing that, we began thinking about challenges in other communities, and I knew just who we could ask.
Now, I don't think that limiting speech would limit hate speech. I think that it would just make it happen more anonymously. With social media, obviously, you have freedom of speech, and that's still happening anonymously.
Hate speech is what you see, the bad stuff is what you remember. But like, there's so many good things that are being said too. There's so many like positive like reactions to things. There's so many like positive things being spread, and they just don't stick as well because they don't hit you where it hurts.
Hey, Jacob. Are you asleep right now?
No, I'm reading my pocket constitution.
What if we have an actual constitutional expert talk about this? Hey, that's a great idea. So I packed up my constitution and went out to find some experts.
The best fighter isn't a person who's always right, and that's what the First Amendment is about. We want to be able to have our voices heard, to have our ideas met in the public arena, not on the battlefield.
After learning about the Constitution, we decided it was time to visit the place that changes are officially made, the Iowa State Capitol.
Being an American and having those freedoms and taking advantage of those and being what the Constitution wants us to be, in a sense of be heard and be active.
Finally, we met up with someone who has matching hairstyles with me. Eric Swalwell, the United States Congressman from California.
Anyone who would try and divide us or take away from what we have, I mean, that's when we're at our worst. So just a belief that we can always multiply success, opportunity, equality.
I even got to talk on the phone with the Senator and President pro tempore, Chuck Grassley.
Got to have dialogue between those of us elected and the people we serve. So my talking to my constituents is freedom of speech, but more importantly, it's you talking to me.
We found United States Senator from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren.
The only way democracy works if we actually use our voices, even when we're broken.
So what does it mean to be an American? Well, it means you have the power to change this country. America is by the people and for the people.
When you feel like there needs to be a change, you can fight for those rights yourself.
You have a voice, you have a message, and you have every right to stand up for what you believe in and move the world forward. All it takes is the courage to stand up
and share your voice.
That is what it means to be an American.
What else would you like us to know?
A lot of time went into that video. We have
nicely edited, by the way.
Thank you so much. That was all him. 100% his editing. Yeah. And then Matt's emotional support. Yeah. That's on the back for me. Yeah. That's why I contribute. We got. I still have like 6 or 7 hours worth of footage on my laptop. So I mean, if we have like some. Like if 20th Century Fox Universal wants to contact me, I'm totally willing to make a theatrical release. There could be a full feature film for that. Yeah, there was so much. We had so much fun doing it. So much. Yeah, we could stretch it out and do another final for the spring with all new footage. A whole other project if we had to. Yeah. I mean, it started out as a final for our AP Gun class, and we didn't really know how it was going to start. And then we ended up going to an event to get some hours for our government class, and we met Cameron Caskey and Eric Swalwell. And from there, we just kind of pulled them aside and made them late to like a dinner party they were having. Yeah. We got an interview with them, and then it kind of just took off from there. And it's some of the best memories I've ever had. And so, like, absolutely, thank you to Mrs. LePetre for that. Because for sure, yeah, Mrs. LePetre making that possible. Was, yeah, really brought us. It was a crazy cool experience. You can't thank her enough for that. Yeah, and just like all of those things, like when we did it. It was really interesting just to be able to talk to those people. And it was really interesting because we were told no a lot. Oh yeah. But then we just continued to ask. Yeah, just don't take it for an answer. Yeah. It was really exciting. We stopped into the governor's office more than we should have, probably. They probably have pictures of our faces in there now. They don't let us in that. No doubt. Yeah, absolutely. but it was just really cool being able to have those moments. Elizabeth Warren, she was at the end of our video. It took us a total of 2 days to get her. It was on her little campaign trail. She was in Iowa. We actually ingratiated ourselves as volunteers in her campaign. Yeah. And then like kind of snuck in through the back door, acting like we were supposed to be there. And they asked what we wanted. And they gave us like they gave us like a special pass to one for more private events happening the next day. And we kind of just brought up a camera and then we got her. So yeah, it was really intense, but a lot of fun. And it was really just cool to know that like these people, they're not really all that different, and they just sit on different chairs than us, and it's just like a really cool experience.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that hearing people's answers to that question of what it means to be an American, it was so refreshing to be able to sit down with people and not care about whether there was like if they were a Republican, if they were a Democrat or an independent, whatever party or whatever beliefs they had. It seemed that everybody had very similar answers, and at the core of it, everybody came back to the freedoms that we have and the power that we have to make changes, positive changes in our country, and we can apply that here in our school district. We can apply it in the city of Urbandale and beyond. But that was for me personally what was most inspiring was knowing that I think everybody, when it really comes down to it, is on the same page that we are lucky to be where we are, and that we just need to keep on working to make tomorrow better than today.
Great work.
Now, do you want to do a commercial for your play?
Yeah, absolutely. While we're here. Yeah. So yeah, brief advertisement here. We have Urbandale High School is putting on the Addams Family. So based on like the cartoon, the movies, the comic, on April 26th, 27th, and 28th. The 26th and the 27th at 7 p.m. and the 27th and the 28th at 2 p.m. So we have a Saturday matinee and a Sunday matinee. It's really exciting. Matt here plays Gomez Adams, the patriarch of the family. It's really funny. It's a lot more obscure and how would you describe it? Like, what's a good word for it? Eccentric is a good word.
Yeah, eccentric's a great word. Kooky, yeah, very out there. It's super fun. And the great thing about this show, especially, is how family friendly it is, and that it has a really good core message. And so we're really excited to be promoting it all across the district, and hopefully have the support of you guys in doing that, and making sure that everybody gets the word about the show. And we can send you a press release too.
That would be great.
Yeah, and but yeah, we're super excited. It's going up here in the next couple of weeks. And yeah, off to rehearsal right now to go get ready for
Actually, yeah, that's
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having us here. It's just really cool, and that message is just something really that we're passionate about spreading, about being able to make change with our voices. So thank you for letting us use ours.
We'll read about you on your things. For us. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you,
Nice
everybody.
job.
Thanks.
Okay. So number 5 is an information only, which means it'll be coming up at another meeting in the future. So our next item is a facilities update.
Very limited. We had one meeting since the last board meeting, a facilities leadership team on March 26th. The agenda and the minutes are there, and basically everyone kind of went around and talked about what they're currently working on and what are the next steps.
No, anyone else? Our goal, by the way, is to be done by 8 o'clock. Okay, the 7A is an action item, and it's altered a little bit from the title. This has to do with our general obligation bonds. And Beth is here to explain that a little bit, and then I'll ask for a motion to approve it.
Sure, we are in the process of selling the second $10 million of general obligation bonds approved by the voters last year. We've already issued $10 million last June. We will sell these bonds on April 22nd. General obligation bonds have to be sold at a public sale. So in this resolution, same process as last year. You're directing the advertisement of sale. You're approving electronic bidding. Most bidders, I know it's hard to believe, do not physically walk in and submit a bid. It's all over the internet now on a bidding platform. And you're approving the preliminary official statement, which is the offering document subject to federal securities regulation that that we send to the, Piper Jaffray sends to the potential bidders to, so they can submit a bid on the bonds. Tells the story of the Urbandale Community School District.
So just to clarify, this is not actually, this is the pre-bond.
Yes. April 22nd, we will sell the bonds at noon, and then we'll come back in the evening and have the board officially accept the low bid.
So, any questions? A motion?
I'll move to approve the resolution directing advertisement of bids and approve the preliminary official statement and electronic bidding too, right?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Thanks.
Thank
Work
you.
is done.
I will see you April 22nd.
Okay, the next item is 7B, which is intended to establish the bid date and the public hearing for the HVAC at the high school. So do we have any questions about that? Any explanation? I see John's here. Please.
All I can say is the recommendations that Eric, I believe, put in there for those dates are, it's gonna work for us. No special explanation, it's just set the date when we open this.
And it's based on the timeline that we had before the board, so.
Everything on the next one too.
And we'll take two individual motions.
One for part one and one for part two?
Yep.
Move to approve action one.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That would be unanimous.
Hi, is this Sarah? Yes, it is. Hey, congratulations. Oh, thank you. Hey, you have joined the board meeting, and we're just setting the public hearing and bid date for the high school heating and cooling unit. So you're
7B. Now we're on 7B2.
Move to approve the bid date.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I believe that's unanimous. Okay. Now we will move on to 7C, which is establishing a bid date for public hearing. This is a 2-item also for the Webster new secure entry and for the high school secure entry remodel.
Move to establish the public hearing date.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so that's unanimous.
Move to establish the bid date.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. And now we're moving into an item that is a long time in surfacing. This is the first reading of a new crowdfunding policy that has been in the works with the Finance Committee for a number of months. And so I'll open it to any comments or questions or clarifications. Again, this is the first reading. And it's going into the 800s, which we haven't actually covered yet, have we? Did we do the 700s? I think we did. Yeah, did we do 800s?
I thought we did. I think we did 700. I'm not sure.
Okay. Any questions on this? I want to thank the Finance Committee for doing the work on this and combining IASB recommended policy with some of our neighboring districts to come up with a workable and understandable strategy to deal with this.
This was an example where technology had moved faster than our policy. So this had been happening for years, but we didn't have anything in policy. So we just kind of needed to catch up. And thanks to Mary Beth for taking the lead on it. And she did a lot of research with our partner districts to see how they were handling it. And I think it'll provide a little bit more consistency, well, a fair amount more consistency for her office.
Any other questions? Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that is unanimous. Thank you. Okay. So the next item is a proposal for four dean positions within the district. Have different levels, as you can see there. I am going to propose that we
Go ahead, sorry. I mean,
cut these up and discuss them because I think they're quite different as far as considerations. So let's start with the two positions at the high school.
I guess I would offer that Mark has a right to propose everything in here and that it goes before the board as proposed first, since that's what the administration is recommending. And then if it doesn't pass or if we need to break it up beyond that, then we can.
Any feelings? Okay, so we will, is that, okay? Do we have any comments or questions then regarding 1, 2, or 3?
So we're gonna move forward with it as it is.
That is what Tanya has recommended.
I would say I probably would be fully in support of it as it's written. So I mean, if that.
Well, so far no motion has been made. I just made the suggestion. I didn't know if Mark had prepared comments first or if we were just gonna move to approve. No.
I don't have any. I mean, if you have questions, if there's anything.
I guess a comment that I have, we're also improving the salary levels of these positions today too, right? So, the data for the new positions came from this.
The same comparison groups we've used the last few years with all positions. And so like the information administratively we've provided the last few years, and then the certified teacher information that came to you this year, and the classified information used metro area comparison group, and then like enrollment from around the state, combine that into an average. And so I just used the same districts, neighbor-wise and enrollment-wise for all those different data sets you received this year.
And Steve, can you just make a comment about the impact to the district? Or maybe Mary Beth?
Financial impact?
Yep, the financial impact.
Well, we have incorporated it into forecast 5 and did the 5-year projections, and all the board's goals are still within range, and it doesn't stress, put a financial stress on anything. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I would like to go back to 2017. And this is still in assembly. And I would like to point out that I personally asked questions about establishing the student supervisor positions. And, you know, I went back in and I was assured at that time that we never planned to make them administrative. And very clear, we do not see this as another, quote, administrative position. It will never be an administrative position, and we do not plan to raise the salary. And that the intent at that time was to make this a stepping stone for someone who might want to go into a higher administrative position. So I'm not in any way reflecting on the quality of the performance of the administrators there. I think they've done a very good job. My problem with this is that less than 2 years ago, the board was approached, you know, to do this and to approve this on the condition that this is what it would be. And I said very clearly at the time, 70,000 isn't an attractive salary for someone. And I was assured that it would be held there. So this has very little to do with the recommendation at the high school and the job that people are doing. It has more to do with how do we know, you know, next year or the next year that we won't, you know, continue to. I'd like to be able to accept and understand what the financial commitments are, and particularly less than 2 years beyond. So that's my problem with this. Do I have a problem with creating these positions? Not the way I understand necessarily that it's working out. My problem is more, if commitments are made, I'm deeply concerned that we're not able to keep those. And we discussed at the time, you know, turnover costs and staffing and how we could probably cover that. And I continue to see that. But so that's one question that I have. At the middle school, I would completely advocate for this because we are saving a position at the high school that has to do with activities when that person left. And I think that it is in the students and the staff's best interest that the activities are in that building. And it's kind of a break even to keep the dean position there. I fully agree at the elementary that the bigger elementary, and I've said this since I got on the board, needed more support. They always have. I'm not sure at this point when we're going to 5 elementaries, and we will, if we accept this, we have 7 administrators for 5 buildings, and I have a little bit of trouble with that. And I've talked to you guys about this, so this isn't a surprise. I would have really liked to have had some investigation of utilizing existing staff who are being moved all over, that maybe for a year or 2 that we could have figured out a way to have support at that building, which it was my understanding we were supposed to have, you know, when we, and Michelle, this has nothing to do with you, it's a position, it's not, but that was supposed to happen with the Jensen position, that it was supposed to be shared between Jensen and Webster, and for whatever reason that didn't happen. So those would be my concerns and my questions. So if I don't go and support all of these, I would prefer to have supported some of them. So if I'm forced into a vote over all of them, then that's, so that is, I've said what I wanted to say, so.
Would you care for a response for those? Or?
That's up to you.
Basically, I'll start marking, fill the gaps. With all of the intentions with the SSS positions were definitely at that time, that's where we foresaw them. I mean, quite frankly, wasn't smart enough to look ahead and foresee this, but a couple situations came up when one of the employees was trying to renew his license. It's not an administrative position. Basically, he has to be on a temporary license for another year because he can't continue in those positions because he's not certified. I'm probably not saying that quite right.
Just transitioning from the initial license to a standard license. The position not being an administrative position put us in a position of putting somebody in a position of not being able to standardize their license.
We also, as we move forward, we have a need to, again, the high school being the largest school, to help with evaluations. And that really came from a request of one of the candidates saying, I'd really like to stay in the district. I'd also like to be closer to teachers and work closely with them. As we know, one of our SSS filled in through a pregnancy, did a great job. And I think probably got the bug to maybe work closely more with staff in that sense. So it just kind of made sense to, as this came up with the need at the middle school, need at the elementary, to try to be consistent and go with the deans, because deans are at a paid lower rate than associate principal. So it's kind of a happy medium. We had no intention, but the situation has changed. Again, much like everything we do, you can only approve it with the information you have at that time, and things do change. As far as having extra, you could say extra, but yet when you're talking the size of the building, it's, for example, with Webster, I know it's been on my entry plan from when I came in, the 4-section facilities, with all the needs they have, especially now with special ed. We did not make that happen. It was full intent that Michelle, using her name, sorry, was meant to be there. Academically, that building had some stronger needs for the staff and the students, and it just didn't quite work out because the needs were still greatly needed there. Kind of took a little bit of a back step for a couple years, and it's not what we desired. And to keep that school moving forward, that was the plan with the intent. Hopefully at some point we could get someone in at Webster. Last year, as you all know, again, with for this year, the addition of level 3, that put on more stress on that school as well. It was already the largest elementary school, so that causes a need for there. Now we also know moving forward, the reason we're asking technically for another person and not just move Michelle there is that as we are expanding the numbers of staff and students at Jensen, which you could argue they're full right now. As we add to Karen Acres, you could argue they're full right now. So when we put them, there's going to be a lot of additional stress. I think it'll go a long ways to help the transition for those 2 years. A lot of things happen. People move in 2 years. I again, don't have a crystal ball, but again, since these are one associate position, one a dean, we will still have a need for a dean at Webster. That won't change when it's a 4-section school. And actually then when we build the new school at the Olmsted site, that's a 3.5, 4-section school. We'll need a dean there as well. So we really don't necessarily end up with additional staff.
I would just, I guess, say that we've always used a collaborative effort, whether that was Shelley and I or Mary Beth and I, to really stay within our targets related to where we are with board goals with unspent authorized budget and spending authority. I would say that over the time I've been in this position, I'm proud of the fact that we've moved from 306 certified teachers to 334 certified teachers. And we've done that not based on an incredible increase in enrollment in students, but on managing what we spend on staff really, really carefully. And so when we talked about this over winter break, spent time with Gary Sinclair again, getting into Forecast 5 and saying, what would this mean for us in the long term, and worked to hit those targets and stay above between 10 to 15% on unspent authorized budget and spending authority. And that's been the goal and where we've worked to stay. Whatever the additional staff that we've brought to the board have always been within those targets.
So the question isn't whether we can afford it, obviously. Another question that I have, I mean, what can you tell me about how we prioritize what we do as far as spending on hiring? Because I hear from people that they're told that we can't afford whatever, you know. I mean, we were told in the past, like, we couldn't afford Project Lead the Way instructors, so we were going to have to cut some of the enrollment there. That's just one example that is a matter of public record. So my question is, how does the district decide? Because you're right, we can't afford it. You're right. We have been very fiscally responsible. So my question is, and I would really like to have defined, is exactly what and how do we make those decisions as far as priorities? And I'd like to know, and I know that's probably not fair putting you on the spot, but I don't know.
I guess I would answer two things. I think one is looking at compliance with Iowa code. So I think about positions that we brought to you last year that were in relation to teaching health at the middle school. And so I would say probably around November of last school year,
Dr. Carlisle invited me and Mr. DeCrife to sit down with her and start to look at how do we remain compliant with Chapter 12. Honestly, one of the things that, you know, in that first brainstorming was, is there something that that we would reduce at the middle school in an effort to regain 1.5 FTE of health? That wasn't acceptable to us. It wasn't acceptable to say, well, we don't need to teach general music. We don't need to do this. We don't need to have life skills. We don't need to have Project Lead the Way at the middle school level, because those are things that are important to us and we want to maintain. And so then we said, this is a high priority, and this is something we have to put our money towards as we prioritize for the next year. And so we added the 1.5 FTE of health. Over the last few years, in relation to other positions, we typically will look at course requests, we'll look at enrollment. So we've added in both vocal and instrumental music in the last three years. We've made increases there because of the enrollment in instrumental band, in vocal music at the high school. Again, it's not tied to that we have more students coming into the district, but because we have high quality programs, we have more and more students sticking with music and chorus from the time they're in elementary through high school. And so at the time, Dr. Kappas and Mr. Carver worked with the staff in both instrumental and vocal music to put together a request to our district, our superintendent cabinet team, and it demonstrated the increased numbers of students, and we brought forth that recommendation. When Steve completed his entry plan, one of the things that was presented back to the board at that time was a desire for increased elementary school counselors, for more equity with nursing, for more equity with librarians. The board at that time recognized those requests of Steve, or recognized that, and gave Steve the directive of saying, well, how are you going to pay for that? That those couldn't be additions, but that needed to be found a way to pay for those things. And so we worked together that year to bring forth a proposal to reduce general ed associate hours, presented that to the board, and ultimately that was what the board approved, was to reduce general ed associate hours across the district to enable us to pay for putting a counselor in every elementary building, for adding a nurse position, adding a teacher librarian position. I believe we also added an ELP teacher at that time. And so typically it is those things that we hear from our principals, that we hear from our conversations at UKILT, and finding ways then to maximize our turnover savings has been a way that we've put those positions in place. A month doesn't go by when I don't hear about an additional staff member that we need. Frequently, I find myself in Forecast 5, looking at our staff member to teacher or to student ratios. How many general regular education teachers do we have compared to students? How does that compare to our neighboring districts? How does that compare to districts with a similar size? If you look at general education teachers, regular classroom teachers, our ratio has been between about 17.2 students per regular education, general education teacher, 17.2 to 17.8 over the last 5 years. If you look at the districts that border us, we are always the lowest or second to lowest. Des Moines a couple times has been maybe a couple tenths of a point lower than we have in relation to general education teachers per student. And so just thinking about how do we compare to our neighbors, where do we see our needs? We continue to have conversation, I guess I would say almost on a monthly basis at our director meetings about where do we see those needs. We know we have had lots of conversation as a community about what does our savings as we move forward with our construction of elementary school number 1 and number 2, what does that mean for us as a district? How would we repurpose that money? And there were things that were discussed in those meetings. We've worked as a relocation leadership team with Dina's help of documenting what were those things that were presented in the many presentations that Steve did with different community groups and community forums, saying these are the things that resonated with people. Denise and Krista have started to do work to lay out a visioning team to establish what are district priorities over the next few years as we work through relocation, in order to identify what are those areas where, when we say we're going to experience savings in this area, that we're going to repurpose that in a meaningful way in other areas of the district. And so being compliant with Iowa code, effectively managing student to teacher ratios in different categories, and looking to see how we compare in relation to other districts. Is there anything that stands out as our ratio is significantly lower or significantly higher? Understanding the changing needs of students in relation to STEM, to the work that we've done with Stellar, making sure that we're putting people in place to support those academic endeavors, and then looking at what are the needs to manage those systems when we put new programs in place.
So when we talked about saving personnel costs, 1.5 million, these to 1.8, did we plan to maintain the same number of administrators? I mean, was that kind of the
My understanding
foundation?
was that would look at elementary level, a principal and a dean at those 4 sections.
So that 400,000 out of the 1.5 million, that would be, so it would be more like 2 million saved a year. Is that right? Because by the time we have 3 deans, by the time you put in your benefits, it's moving in on 400,000, probably.
Okay.
So is that already deducted from that 1.5 million that we're saving?
No.
You'd have,
Or,
Because that was the
You didn't
question I
take-
asked Mary Beth.
no, I'm talking, please. When you were projecting 1.5 to 1.8, did it include 6 elementary administrators? Or
It
7?
included 4 principals and then a dean of students or an assistant principal in those locations. The buildings that would be 4 sections, not at the smallest building.
So the 1.5 million would be saved on top of that. Is that what you were contending at the time?
I think that's what I'm contending, yes.
Do you remember?
I thought that was the grand total was up to 1 point.
And that was my understanding at the time. So what I'm kind of hearing and what I would kind of like to see is maybe a more formal way of, this is a need that I see, for example, at this elementary or whatever, or at the high school, for example. And maybe a more objective, systemic way of looking at that versus, I've kind of heard this and, we can probably afford it, and because that's what I'm kind of hearing at this point. And I don't know whether there's like when John did work orders, his priorities were always on how many students were affected by the work order to get the work done. I don't know what the priority is here. I'm not expecting you to answer it, but it's an issue that I'm probably going to come up with again, is how do we make those decisions? What are our priorities as a district? I mean, we all know that we've shorted some parts of the system, so we kept 6 elementaries. I mean, we've all acknowledged that. And so I'm kind of wondering how going forward, that's not going to continue to happen. And we say that's, and again, it's not really your problem. I mean,
But it is, it is my problem because, there are actions and decisions that I have been incredibly instrumental in making happen over the last 11 years. And the day that I leave here, I won't forget that.
I'm not trying to insult you.
No, I'm not
wondering
insulted.
what the systemic way of evaluating that is.
So can I make a comment, please?
Usually though, we only spend the money where we have the savings. So again, it's really not related to that money because a lot of it is the savings we have each year. So we don't take a step back. When we have staff turnover and we hire younger and we save X amount of money, that's usually what we utilize for those programs because we don't have new money coming in with higher enrollments.
I understand.
So again, it's not really coming out of that savings. That savings is different from the staffing we will because we will have reduced staff at fewer buildings.
Right.
But these programs, to make a comparison of saying we're hiring these people and say it's going to affect that money, it may not. It probably won't because we have savings on an annual basis away from that money. Also, just on the normal turnover from veterans versus rookies. And the truth is the needs, we'll never have a perfect plan. The needs change and you try to react as much as you can. We don't have a crystal ball to know what hit, but we all know, I mean, you yourself acknowledge, we need assistance at Webster. That's a given. And so I would contend, why wouldn't we need it now at the other two elementaries that are going to be jam-packed at the seams? And that's really what we're asking for. That's the big piece I think that's moving ahead. The other ones are, to me, they just make sense.
Judy,
Okay, so when we were first presented with this plan, which I would say came about, the presentation and the assessment of these positions was done in a systematic way. And that's my perception of it. The first question I asked, and I can't remember who was there at that finance committee meeting, but I said, I asked that question that you just asked, which is this cutting into and spending our savings that we're going to get by this elementary plan? And the answer was no. And then we started talking about, okay, well, those savings that we're going to have, how can we ensure that that isn't spent up before we even get a chance to have a plan, which is, I think, kind of relates to what you're asking about. And so there will be a committee, that's my understanding, built, and it's going to be an offshoot of the, Steve, what committee? The visioning committee. To put a systematic look at how, as a district, we can invest back into student learning with that money. So from my perspective, that I had asked that question, it was answered. And so I think I'm interested in us maybe talking about that a little bit more, because I think that will provide what I see as a plan for our dreams and wishes for new staff and what the reality is going forward. So I just wanted to say that committee exists, and I think that's going to solve some of these problems. The second thing is I struggle a little bit with this burden of holding ourselves to the predictions, however educated they were, that staff made 2 years ago, because this isn't a court of law. This is not, this is an area where we can get things wrong. And I kind of see how 2 years ago we might have wanted this solution to really, really work, and now kind of have grown and matured out of it. So I struggle with that being the standard to which we hold every decision we make, because I bet a lot of the things that come to our table are fixes for things that we got wrong a few years ago. So I think that we might be going down a slippery slope if that's kind of the way that we look at making this decision.
I'd like to make a comment. Number one, these administrators live and breathe and eat these schools each and every day, and they know what type of people and what needs there are in these schools. By the fact that we're losing the four walls of Olmsted, we are not losing a single student and we are not losing a single teacher. And we have proven that a 3-section building needs support. Therefore, we technically have 2 additional 3-section buildings come that day. So having an administrator being able to float between the 2, and we have proven for the second time that Jensen needs a full-time principal. We have tried before to have a half-time there. This is the second time, and we need a full-time principal there. We have administrators, and there's still going to be a lot to be done in Olmsted, even though there's not 4 walls to be there. As a leader in my own work, I can go to my boss, which I did 8 months ago, and say, I don't need staff. And then a law comes down or a change is made systematically or something happens and things happen that the staffing changes and your needs change. We are a QCI district. We are continually looking for improvements. And the fact that something's brought before us that's different than 2 years ago should not be surprising to a single person of us here, because we are continually looking to make ourselves better, to make sure that we're serving students appropriately, that we have the needs and the right people in the right places. These people live this. If this is a proposal that they brought before us, we've hired them to be in these positions, and I feel that it needs to be supported in that way. I move to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That would be me, since they're all together.
Yeah, you're opposed to, Schmitz is opposed, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
As it's written, just to be clear, as it's written.
Sure.
Okay. And we have an employee requesting an extended leave of absence. Any questions on that?
I guess the only thing I want to say is that we have our job as a board is to set policies and oversee policies and procedures. If a policy or procedure is not in place and we don't have guidance, then that's where we come in too, then to say, what is the policy or procedure going to be? In this instance, there's a policy and procedure in place as to what the answer is to this, and that our job is to ensure that the policies and procedures of this district are being followed and done. So I recommend what administration has said and that we deny this request.
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
I didn't understand the reminder of what our role was, Tanya.
Just our role on the board is policy and oversight. We're supposed to ensure that there's policies in place, and we're supposed to ensure that the district is following all those policies and rules that we've set before us. And if there isn't.
Oh, you just want to make sure that we understood what our role was?
Yep.
Okay, thank you for the reminder.
Is there a second? Is there more discussion?
I guess I would just say part of our policy allows, am I wrong in saying part of our policy allows for this to come to the board in an appeal?
Who are you asking?
I guess all of you, anyone who could answer.
I think the best information about this is contained in the master agreement. To my knowledge, no request like this has ever come to the board. A little bit over a year ago, you had a request for a 1-year leave of absence that you approved. That employee was required to notify us of their intent to return for this academic or for the next academic year by January 15th. They did that. And so if you look at one of the attachments, it would be under item G on page 16 of the master agreement between the district and the UEA. It reads, in the sole exclusive and final discretion of the board or its designee, other paid or unpaid leaves may be granted for extraordinary circumstances upon the filing of a written request for such leave by an employee. An employee granted an unpaid leave for an academic year shall indicate whether they intend to return for the following academic year by January 15th of the leave year. There is no, I guess, policy or master agreement language that speaks to a request beyond an academic year. As this came to Steve and I's attention, in our discussion, we felt like we needed to bring this to you. for your consideration. And I felt it was important just for you to see the master agreement language. And again, the policy 415, but it doesn't necessarily speak to this type of request.
Because I guess that the way I read that is that, like us, anyway, go ahead.
So knowing that he's seeking a 2-year leave, he won't be able to intend to return for the next year, for the following year. So that's the answer. I mean, that's the conclusion. But you want us to make it official to say that because we know that he's not going to be able to fulfill that.
Like I said, in our conversation, I think Steve and I felt that it was something that should be presented to the board for consideration.
I guess I read that section G a different way. Definitely not an attorney, but to me, that's saying it's not excluding any other lengths of leave by mentioning the leave of an academic year.
It doesn't preclude the return once concluded either.
Right.
By the language.
My understanding is we've never had anything more than a year, so I guess we're also concerned if you go 2 years, then is it 3 years, is it 4 years? I mean, at what point does the employee have to make a decision to continue on their contract or give it up?
Sure, but I don't think that precludes consideration on a case-by-case basis.
That's what we're seeing.
And 2 years is I think, a standard set for academic leave. No, so I guess I don't see the slippery slope thing there because 2 years is something that I would expect to come to the board at some point.
I guess here's my concern, and I don't have any statistics in front of me. I wish I maybe did. Typically, when people go to get an additional education, they usually don't come back to the job that they went. My sister was in a master's program, and everybody went back to their job for 6 months and left. Because why? They went on a huge master's program. They had big intentions to do something different, to grow something. 2 years is kind of, in my opinion, a long time. A lot can change in 2 years. What does that mean? I don't really know. What does it mean that, what if this job completely changes in 2 years? We don't know what it will look like. What if something happens and we have 5 people in band and now we don't need this? And I realize that's a big extreme example, but I think it's hard for us to say, what do we know this program will be like in 2 years? And how do we know that in 2 years we won't have the whole entire school in band? And again, this job is different or things have changed, and what does that look like? I feel like 2 years is a long time. I also truly believe that if people are willing to do this and go into a deeper education, I'm not so sure that they're going to come back and commit to a long time in a job like this. I personally believe that most people, if they're going to do a sabbatical and they're going to improve themselves, that they have bigger aspirations as well. And that's my concern.
If everyone quit band, and I'm an orchestra person, but I don't let that happen. And as a district, we had to reevaluate the job descriptions. In that case, the position, what would that mean? The position didn't exist anymore, so there was no position to come back to? Like, what would be our liability there?
When we have granted leaves of this nature, people have had a right to a job for which they are certified.
Okay. So if that job doesn't exist.
So for example, the leave you approved last year, we posted that vacancy and we hired a new teacher at that building in that grade level. When I sat down with the employee that was on leave in January, before they even submitted the leave, we sat down and talked through what a leave would mean. When they sat down in January, we talked again about the fact that that person would likely not return to the building that they had been an employee at, nor their classroom, their grade level. They would return to a vacancy for which they were appropriately certified. And that has been our past practice in relation to this. So again, given the nature of this request, it's a relatively small pool.
Yeah.
The most recent request was in our largest pool, and it would have been very easy for that person to have returned for next year, and we would have placed them in a job that we have a vacancy for right now. Our vacancies in this particular pool are less frequent. And so the potential for having more high school band directors than we technically need is there, or the potential of having the person who's requesting to leave, if we had an elementary music vacancy that year, they would be certified for that position, and we would have the right to place them in a vacant elementary music position based upon their return.
And if at that time they choose not to stay with the district, what has been our financial impact by granting the leave?
At that time, I guess I would hope that rather than 1 year, like not next January 15th, but the January 15th after that, they would be telling us of their intent. And then if they don't intend to return, then there's no financial loss. To Tanya's point, and I don't know the requester's intention. I think, you know, the intent, to me, this is my personal opinion, the intent of a leave request is to be able to attend to a personal need that requires an extended leave. The intent is not to provide an insurance policy for while I'm gone, that I have a job to return to if something else doesn't come along. So I think thinking about where does the board perceive this request is incumbent on you to say this is what we're comfortable doing.
So let's talk this way a little bit. So I don't know how I feel yet about this, but if we are guaranteed that if there is not a position available at the time this person is intending to return, to my understanding, our liability is zero because there's nothing available for this person, correct?
Well, if we grant the leave, they have a job when they come back, just not the job that they left.
Right. So, but they have to. This person must choose from a list of positions that are commensurate to his certification, correct? So, if there is nothing that he wants that's within his certification, he doesn't choose any position.
Not what he wants, it's what he's certified.
What he's certified for, however he wants it, yeah. So does that mean?
I guess I perceive that if you grant.
Does that mean that does that mean if we have a math opening, so we fill his position, so we are 100% staffed in band?
Yes.
And he returns in 2 years, and we have a math position open. Can you be the math teacher?
No.
He can only be a band teacher, which right now we have 6.
He can only, a person
full-time
can only return for a job for which they're certified.
And if we're at capacity.
And if we're at capacity, then we would have to pay that person, even though we don't have a job for them. So we are setting ourselves up for a liability in 2 years from now.
Of potentially having more people in a category than you need.
Than we need.
Yes.
We have to pay him for
Yes.
something that he's not coming back to.
Exactly, and I'm not sure how the board would feel or what administration will propose, but we're not gonna leave that position open. I guess I hope that we don't leave that position open for 2 years and say, well, we don't really need to fill it.
No.
We have plenty of capacity within the staff we have. So therefore, you see that's my concern. I don't think we can spread our staff that thin to hold that position open for 2 years to have him for the return.
That was my point, trying to get clarified. So yeah, if there is something that we have to come up with for this person, if there's not the position available, then that would be our liability.
We're holding a position open.
So by Iowa law, we can offer a temporary contract to someone for 6 months. Could we seek out someone and say, we're only going to hire you if we know that 2 years from now, you don't want this job anymore? I mean, if our intent is to approve this leave, then I would want to be incredibly upfront with people and say, we're posting a job that's a 2-year job. And that on the day that you're hired, we would like you to submit a letter of resignation dated the end of the 2021 school year.
Your candidate pool would be 0.
Actually, for this, I think there is probably a candidate pool that would be available, given this kind of position. And
internally or
elsewhere, externally. I mean, you have people looking to take an additional, depending on what stage of life they're in and age they're at and what we're looking for, knowing going into it. 2 years, I mean, we've had staff fill in for 2 years before to come in because that's what they're looking for. When they know that's pretty much what the position is going to entail. So I don't think our pool would necessarily be 0.
Right.
I also think his stated purpose is education. That's certainly something to champion as an educational board here. I'm not one way or the other necessarily as we sit here. I certainly understand the points that Tanya is making and the potential bind within which we could find ourselves. But I also immediately, in my mind, jump to what Mark was saying is we'd be incredibly upfront with whoever we look to hire for that position.
No.
Okay.
Can you force them to sign an only 2-year contract that you will not reduce? Yeah, okay. So that's number one. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And number 2, my struggle is with that, as frank and honest as it is, every kid in that school will know that. What kind of commitment does a person have to these students in the stand and to these kids? The people, I just believe that a program like this deserves the commitment of the person and deserves the commitment to a freshman to say, yes, I want to see you in my band. I want to see you in my highest band. I want to see you succeed. Not, well, I'm only here 2 years, but we're going to do the best we can. And, I'm sure that the guy that comes back in 2 years is going to, value your extremely playing. I believe in every classroom that relationships with students is part of it. And I think you guys talked about that, just that's really important. And I believe it's here too. And kids know if somebody's not committed.
That presupposes that.
Probably true.
Is there a motion on the table?
Yeah. I moved to agree with what's in there and deny the request.
Also.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, awesome, because I'm abstaining.
Is Sarah still on the phone?
Sarah? Sarah?
Okay, it's 2-2, it doesn't pass.
Call her back.
Yeah, she's,
So I feel
Is
like-
there another motion on
Yeah, I
there?
was gonna say, I think that we
It's
need
still-
another,
yeah.
I think then we need, as a board, to come up with a plan, because
Okay.
I'm gonna sit here and say that I'm struggling with this, you know, just from a level.
Sure. If that didn't pass, I mean, I certainly could sit there and say, I move to approve the request. If there's any second, then we go that way, and if not, then we're at an impasse, and we go on.
Okay. So,
I think I think you can only, again, please check the back of that sheet. I think it has to be somebody that's flipped their vote. I don't think you can just ask for a second motion because you didn't like the first motion.
Say that again?
The board technically has made a decision at this point, and just because you don't like that, doesn't mean you
We
can.
haven't
We
made
haven't
any
made
decision.
any
at this
decision.
point.
Oh, that's
I
what I'm
don't
saying.
think-
You
That is a
absolutely can
decision.
move.
what's the
what is
decision?
it? What is the decision?
We didn't
No.
approve
The
it.
decision is you don't have a consensus.
But we didn't
Motion would
approve,
fail.
but we didn't approve it. The administration recommended the board deny the request
Oh,
at this
I
point.
see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And so,
I'm with you now.
If it wasn't
and supported
approved.
that through motion, also second.
Yes.
It didn't approve it, so it can
By the way,
still,
it's- yes.
Yep.
Thank you for the correction.
Trying to see if she can come back.
So can we,
But it would be nice to know when she dropped off and how much of the discussion she heard, because I feel like there's some issues with,
Well, she'll need to
Partial
know what-
attendance.
Exactly.
but
uh, opens a whole other can of worms.
yeah,
So
and we need to know when she's
there's
dropped off.
a tie.
There could be a motion to table.
Can we,
until there's more.
can I move the table until the next meeting?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So it's 4-1.
And what, okay, so knowing this, could there be any more data provided to us by administration that would help us make a decision either way? Or are we satisfied with the information that we have before us? That we can confidently get a,
Do you have any suggestions?
I'm
I don't know what else
I'm
you could
suggesting
provide.
it to everybody, so I don't.
what else would help?
For me,
us?
I'm okay, I think, with the information that I have in front of me. I was, you know, my comments were more focused on our end result upon return. So that's been answered for me. I don't know if anybody else needed any other information besides that.
Would you want to know, or would you want us to reach out to any other school district to see if they have policy around it more than a one?
Sure,
If
that
they've
could-
experienced leave requests that are longer than a year.
Yeah, educational settings,
That'd be
too,
great.
as far as retention rate, how
Yeah.
long.
I think it would
Sure.
also be good to have the alternatives, because there is another alternative. You can lay off whoever you hire because there's no room for them. Piece of them. That
That's-
wouldn't be wonderful, but it would be an option.
And I would want to be upfront with that person. And again, I think, given the nature of our expectations for our high school band program, that I don't know that that's in the best interest of the program.
The other thing is, typically a person who's certified in instrumental is also certified in vocal, so it cuts across the entire K-12 certification.
Right, and so that's, as I said, any vacancy for which people are certified, they could be in.
It's crystal ball, it's,
So
we don't know
maybe
what will
while
be
you're
available.
checking, maybe find out if there are 2-year positions.
Well, so a temporary contract in Iowa is 6 months or less. A 279 contract is a continuing contract. And so that's where I would want to be incredibly clear with the person, the people that are applying for the job, and our legal responsibility to protect someone's job is an FMLA requirement. This has nothing to do with FMLA.
Correct.
And so I think it's important to just be crystal clear about the request and crystal clear about moving forward what the best answer is.
So we voted to table it until April 22nd with the hope that the full board will be here. And
Any additional information would be welcome.
Yeah, comparative policies, I think.
My only comment is, I realized, is that okay to the staff? And I guess they don't have a choice. I guess I'm just thinking abilities any.
Okay, thank you. All right, mowing contract.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, we don't have any board reports. Do we have a superintendent's report?
This time?
Okay. May we move forward do I have a motion to move the consent agenda forward?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Do we have any questions or clarifications? Maybe we need to, I would conjecture, Mary Beth, talking a little bit about the Wellmark contract and that
Oh,
it's,
yeah. Thank you.
please.
Oh, and yeah, and since I saw you, they've got the renewals today. Thank you for bringing that up. And they are as presented. So what we saw, what you got in there that said initial,
okay.
Walmart came through this afternoon, and what you saw is what we are getting. So we are able to pass on a 0% insurance increase. I believe this might be year 5.
That's spectacular.
Wow.
It is incredible. And I would give credit to Shelley for having the foresight, Shelley Clifford, way back when, to set up this self-funded insurance program, which has allowed the district to do incredible things. And that's not a lot of others can.
Okay, do we have any other clarifications, any items?
I did come in and review bills this morning, and I apologize, I didn't have to do that for the last board meeting, but I did for today. And I'm working on procedures because I have to present them to the finance committee, so I will have them up by the next board meeting on what the heck I do, other than hang out in the annual office and look through the payables. Which there were a lot of credit card charges between the show choir traveling and the band traveling and the administration going to a couple of conferences, so our credit cards were in great shape.
Should we tell Sarah she
Okay, so any other questions, clarifications? Very good news on the health insurance. Nicely done. And we're going to have an embroidery club.
with a spectacularly written constitution, I might say.
Does it fit in the box?
Pocket one. Yeah.
Okay, so we don't necessarily have to do this, but could I have a motion to approve it then? Or
No motion to approve.
a vote, but
Aye.
Right?
Aye.
aye. All in favor, yes, unanimous. Or opposed, same vote. All right. Any other items that we need to discuss?
Just a reminder on the 17th, if those of you who can make it at 8 o'clock, it's a fitness center photo op at the high school.
Who's committed already?
I'm bringing my own helmet.
Did you keep the hard hats or?
No. Okay, may I have we will be evaluating the meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
7:50.
Wow.
Hey,
Yeah,
yeah.
I made it.
Good job.
Thank you.